our next guest was very visible in Las Vegas last week. I'm not sure if she actually attended the event, but I did see her a couple times on Thursday. We will ask her that. She is UFC women's bantamweight fighter Leslie Smith, and she is joining us via the magic of Skype right now. There she is, at least half her face. Leslie, how are you? Oh, there it is.
I'm great.
Oh, can you move the I want to see your, no, wrong way. There we go. Were you at the fight on Saturday?
Just at the fight on Saturday.
Okay, the audio is acting up. It's like all muffled. Is there a reason why it's all muffled?
It took us a second to get the audio right last time, and then it came together.
This is good. So you were in attendance on Saturday?
I was.
Who do you think won?
I think Nate won the fight, but I am more than willing to admit that I'm totally biased.
Yeah. Which rounds did you give him? Do you recall?
Well, everybody agreed that he had the third and the fifth round. I thought he had the fourth round too. But again, I just see my boy winning. That's all I see when I watch fights.
That's right. I mean, of course, you are a member of the Scrap Pack, and you've known the Diaz brothers, Gilbert Melendez, Jake Shields, for a very long time. So I appreciate your insight. Just curious, what do you make of people saying that Conor was running, things like that? Do you feel like he wasn't engaging enough in the fight?
He was clearly running quite a bit in the fight. There were times when he turned his back, and he even had his arms at his side doing the running man as he was running away. And there's multiple perspectives on that it's an intelligent thing to do when you're too tired and you can't fight anymore, is that you get your breath. But I don't know. I'm not a fan of that style of fighting. There's a lot of people who've used it very well, but it's not my favorite.
It feels like there's a level of respect between Conor and Nate. I don't know if that's the case between the teams. As sort of a member of Team Diaz, do you have more respect for him after seeing that fight on Saturday? The fact that he, came back, was losing in the third round, and ended up winning the decision, at least as far as the judges are concerned. Like, did your respect go up for him at all after Saturday?
I always have respect for anybody who's going in there fighting. I think it's a wonderful thing when they're in there fighting. And I'm not anybody who's ever going to boo after a fight, no matter how much I disagree with anything. I mean, I might throw a tantrum myself if I'm in there, but I'm not going to boo anybody else. However, that doesn't change the fact that for me, and I'm pretty sure for a lot of people, what's said outside of the cage, that's not just hype, and it's not just to build up a fight. That's real. It's not like anything exists in a vacuum, like, oh, that was just said for the fight. So everything he's ever said is still there, and it's still in my mind, and it's not going away because of the fight. But yeah, I have a lot of respect for what happened inside the cage. So
you feel like he has said things that have offended you and others, right?
Yeah.
Like what?
Stuff like, I'm gonna kill you, and I'm gonna kill your whole team, and my whole team could beat your whole team, and I mean, basically everything he's ever said to Nate ever. Okay.
Did you talk to Nate after the fight?
Briefly, just said hello and good job, and you're a warrior. And I don't even know if those things were heard because it was inside of a club. So who knows? But I felt them with my heart.
Yes. And an inspiration as well. I mean, how do you not leave that fight as a fan, as a fighter, inspired? Do you want to see a third fight right away, or would you rather see them go their separate ways?
I'd love to see a third fight. I think it's a great thing. I think it's a wonderful thing, not just for us and our team, because we love seeing Nate fight. It's wonderful to get to rally and that. But for all of MMA, I think they're doing wonderful things for the sport. They're changing the way that MMA fighters get paid.
Yep.
They're changing the way that they're seen in public media, not just MMA media. And I think that's wonderful. The more of it, the better.
Yes, I couldn't agree more. Rising tide is lifting all boats here. So let's talk about your big week, because around, 10 or so days ago, you were on Access TV on this sort of panel with the MMAFA guys. And then I saw you at the Professional Fighters Association press conference. And let it be known, if there ever is some kind of association, union, anything, let it be known in the history books that the only active UFC fighter that showed his or her face at this inaugural press conference was Leslie Smith. And I think that you deserve a lot of credit for that. And you seem to have more guts than anyone on the roster. So I give you a lot of credit for that. are you like there's this weird battle going on between the two sides? Where do your allegiances lie?
I, as you mentioned, I was there with the MMAFA on the very first panel, and then I was there at the fighters at the other one, the PFA, and I did say there and then that I would sign something, and I'm totally going to be part of anything that's going to be formed to help the fighters. Where I stand as far as the two of them and whatever potential animosity or competition they might have is I think that they can work together. I don't think that their goals are necessarily in conflict, because the PFA, they want to form a union for UFC fighters, which means that the UFC fighters are going to have to become designated employees and then sign union cards and will work as a body in that way. And then the MMAFA is actually an association for all the fighters. And their main focus right now is on the Ali Act, getting the Ali Act passed to MMA, which the PFA has said that they are willing to support as well. So I think that they can be two arms of a greater body of people looking out for the fighters. I think they can work together.
Great answer, by the way, and I couldn't agree with you more. I think the bickering is very silly, and they should be able to work together. Now, you are obviously very passionate about this subject. When did that happen? When did you start to get interested in this?
I've always felt like this. I couldn't tell you exactly the very first time that I went on the record as far as saying that fighters need more care for their well-being and a larger percentage of the revenue and more respect in general from the company. It's such a funny thing. They get respect from outside of the company, from everyone who watches the fights, and then, from the inside, just the way the UFC works. For the record, the UFC has always been wonderful to me. All of the employees, I get so happy to see everyone who works for the UFC, and they've taken great care of me outside of the tumor thing, and then they even took care of that. So I am not disgruntled or angry with the UFC. I just think things need to change so that we can all grow and improve.
Can you shed some light on the quote unquote tumor thing that you that you alluded to? What's the story there?
It was awesome. I landed in Las Vegas at 11 o'clock, and then the UFC had made a doctor's appointment for me at 1 o'clock. I thought I was just going to get it looked at, but I walked in and they said, "We have everything right here to take it out. Would you like it to be gone?" And I said, "Yes, please." And 5 minutes later, they were injecting me with the local anesthesia.
Yep.
And then a couple minutes later, they were slicing in and cutting it out.
Damn. And how big was it?
About the palm of my hand.
Whoa. Did it hurt?
It was surprisingly large.
Wow.
When they were cutting it out, no, it didn't hurt because the anesthesia worked out very well. And then for quite a few hours that night, it didn't hurt as well. But it's been a pretty constant feeling since then. But it's going away right now.
What was the tumor?
It was just a fatty tumor. It's called a lipoma.
Yeah.
They're actually very common. A lot of people get them, and they're not life-threatening. My life was never in danger at any point. But it is a tumor. It's an unwanted mass of cells inside of my body that serve no purpose, and I was very happy to get rid of it.
So, when you're training, fighting, whatever, if someone punches you there, did it hurt?
No, it never hurt.
Okay.
It never hurt anything. Some of my teammates and my coaches were like, "What the hell? We didn't even know about that.
Wow.
How come you didn't tell us about it? We've been punching you and kicking you and kneeing you in the stomach forever." But it's never anything that caused me considerable pain. I mean, maybe here and there a twinge, but nothing significant.
So did you ever try to get the UFC or ask the UFC for help in removing it and were unsuccessful, and then you go out in the media and talk about it, and then, a matter of hours later, there's an appointment made and it's removed? Did you feel like you had to do that to get their attention?
It worked out really well. My plan, it's not like I was sitting on this tumor waiting for the right time when we're going to be on camera and then I can mention it. Because that's absolutely not the way that I was thinking about it. I did bring it up to the UFC a long time ago and asked if they could help me get rid of it. And they said no. I don't remember who it was that I talked to, but it was a pretty standard question. And the standard response was just, that's not covered by the insurance. And I dropped it at the time. And then I just accepted that I was going to have to figure out another way to get it done. It wasn't major invasive surgery or anything. It was merely sitting in between the the skin layer and the muscle layer of my skin. So it was just a flesh wound.
Go ahead. Sorry.
Just that it's going to heal up very fast. It wasn't major, but it did take talking about it on TV and getting a lot more eyes in order to avoid the standard response of that's not covered by the insurance.
Mm-hmm. And so did they pay for the entire thing?
Yes.
Wow.
Completely.
Well done.
Totally taken care of.
Well done.
It was wonderful. Thank you to the UFC for that.
Since you've been so vocal and visible when it comes to this association/union stuff, have you talked to any other fighters about why they aren't as vocal or perhaps as interested in it? Because one thing that Jeff Boris said last week on this show was he's surprised at how afraid the fighters seem to be to join something like this.
I have gotten talked to by a lot of the fighters. One of the great things for me about being as visible as I am is that I'm putting it all out there on the line. So I know, I'm pretty sure, 90-something% sure, that any fighter that I interact with at this point knows where I stand on the issue. So I don't have to be knocking on everyone's heads and saying, hey, I'm for the fighters union. You want to stand with me? Because everyone knows that. I'm putting it out there, and so people do talk to me. A lot of people have come up to me and been like, "Hey, thank you so much for doing what you're doing." You know, my teammates are like, "We're really proud of you for being so visible and so vocal." And a lot of the other fighters, they tell me why they're not doing it. Huh. They're like, "Look, I have a lot of stuff going on right now," or "I'm working on getting a contract right now," or something happened with my last fight last time, or just for whatever reason they don't feel 100% secure, and there's even some who aren't apologetic at all. They're just like, I'm doing my own thing, and that's totally fine. We've been using the word scared a lot when trying to talk about why fighters aren't signing up for that, and I've used it as well, the word scared, but I've done a little bit more reflection over this weekend. And I don't think that scared is the right word for it. I think that as fighters, when we get ready for a camp, we have to devote 100% of everything to getting ready for a camp. And I know that I've been in a camp before and things have gone on, a sponsor for a t-shirt, or maybe a coach can't show up, or a training partner falls out for a sparring day. And I can't get attached to all of those details. I have to say, okay, I need to delegate someone to take care of those things for me, and then I'm going to keep focusing on what I have to focus on, which is me and doing my best. And I think that that's what we're seeing going on, is that this is a situation where the fighters are like, whoa, this does need to happen, but I'm focused. I'm focused on me. I'm focused on my training. And so is there someone that I can delegate? And at this point, there isn't anyone to delegate. So the easiest thing is just to keep on focusing on our training and then not to pay attention or jump in the fray. Because that's really what it takes at this point, is you have to be willing to dive headfirst into the fray. I mean, we don't know if the UFC is going to come down on us. We're still working to get public support, even though it's overwhelmingly been in our favor. There's there's Fighters Association and the Fighters Union going at it. So it's hardly a swim down the lazy river right now as far as navigating which way to go, but it's 100% worth it. And when people decide that it's the right thing to do to jump into it, then I'm there to welcome them and tell them everything I know.
I hate that I have to, or feel like I have to ask you this question, but I will anyway, given the climate that you work in. Are you at all worried about any repercussions from the UFC?
I get worried every time. I get worried every single phone call, every single tweet that I'm going to put out. I mean, fighting in the UFC has been a goal of mine for so long. It's something that I'm incredibly proud and happy to be here. I want nothing more than to continue to fight here for the UFC. And so every time I say something, I'm like, oh my gosh, am I am I stabbing myself in the head with this? But I know that it's the right thing to do. And I haven't had any negative repercussions. They've been great. Sean Shelby called my management to talk about another fight. A couple days ago, they took care of the tumor for me. I still got a discretionary bonus. I got a $25,000 discretionary on UFC 198.
Wow.
And that was awesome. That was just as much as I made for the fight. So I was thrilled to get that. I think it shows a couple things. It shows that they're not so angry at me that they're holding off on discretionary bonuses, because it's in the name. It's totally up to them to give that to me or not. I also think, though, that getting a bonus like that is proof that there's money that's being left on the table. Like, if we were doing a good job bargaining as fighters and we were getting everything that we're owed, we're getting our full share of the pie, then the UFC, they wouldn't be coming around afterwards saying, by the way, good job, here's some more money.
Right.
And I'm 100%, I love to get it. I'm super appreciative. If I knew who to say a thank you to, I would. So thanks UFC for the money. I appreciate that. But it's not going to scare me away from talking. It's not going to make me not want to talk. And the idea, I hope that it's not discretionary bonuses that are keeping people from talking, because the idea that maybe you might get some undisclosed amount that you don't know about, if you're lucky, that's not a good reason to not talk about the rights that we need and the defenses that we need for us as employees.
This has nothing to do with the media. We can't vote in anyone, but holy moly, if anyone's listening, I hope they're voting for you to be the head of any kind of association, because your answers are just so intelligent and you break it down very, very nicely. So kudos to you on that, Leslie. Really, really impressive stuff. Do you think this time next year, let's just say, will there be some kind of association? Are you confident in that?
I am very confident in that. So there is currently the MMA Fighters Association is in existence. It's been in existence for years, and it has goals that it's working on. The main goal is the Ali Act. So it is there, and it is working, and it is going. The other one, the PFA, that's the Fighters Union for the UFC fighters, that's going to take some more steps. But I was able to sit down with Jeff Boris after the press conference and talk to him, and I was really encouraged to hear the timeline that he was laying down and the plans that he had for getting everything started. So I'd say that in a year we should see a totally different climate and actions being taken by the association and the union.
Now, what about, you mentioned 198, you fought Cyborg. I know you were frustrated with how that fight played out. Is there any talk? I mean, you said that they reached out, but anything concrete that you can tell us about when you'll be fighting again, and perhaps against who?
There's nothing concrete. A couple months ago, I had called out Raquel Pennington, and she said that she would love to fight me after her fight in August. And that was before it was even announced, this fight. And so congratulations to her on the fight last night. I'd love to get inside the cage with her. I'll be calling my management and asking them if they can reach out and ask about that fight, if that's still available. But no, I haven't gotten any word from the UFC about a potential opponent. And I'm thinking that November would be the time that I would want to fight. And sounds like the most logical time for me to fight as well.
Have you seen that footage of Cyborg cutting weight before your fight?
I have not seen the footage.
Okay.
But I was told that she was crying before the fight. And I've been friends with Cyborg for a while, so we've been at Invicta fights before. We've been at Invicta fights before, and she's been crying at the Invicta fights, cutting weight, and it's been known, and we've shared Epsom salts and ice and hung out in the room to get our IVs together afterwards. So I know it's a very tough thing for her.
But to go to 140, because you're saying you've seen her cry going to 145?
Yes.
Damn. So you don't feel like that's an indication that she should not be cutting to 140? Probably
probably cutting down large percentages of our body weight is not the most intelligent thing to do.
Right.
There's probably not any doctor that would recommend it from a purely medical perspective, but we do what it is that we need to do. And I believe that she has a very good team of people who care about her, surrounding her at all times while she's doing this cut. And so how far our mind can go and how far our body can go are two very different things. And it takes outside eyes to make sure that we're not going too far. That's when the biggest problems, I think, from weight cutting happen, is when a fighter is by themselves and they're getting down to those final pounds and they don't have people watching them to say, hey, you look horrible. I think that your pulse is slowing down and your temperatures are dropping. You might die. Because at a certain point, the fighter's mind isn't going to say that. Now, as her friend, I would never recommend that she cut down to 140 or 135 because I've seen how far it goes and I know how painful it is. But at the same time, I know the human body is capable of all kinds of things. And crying isn't necessarily an indicator that it's the worst situation that we've ever been in. I cry often. I know that we've all seen clips of Rose Namajunas crying, and I don't think that takes away any respect from it. I think that's a way to know that we're giving it our all.
All right. Fair enough. Last thing for you, considering it's your division, do you feel like the division / the sport needs Ronda to return to keep up the momentum and interest and things like that? Or do you feel like the last, 10 months or so has shown that, look, if for whatever reason she doesn't come back, it's all going to be fine. People are going to be interested. There's going to be great fights, champions, etc. What do you think?
The great Burt Watson.
Oh, yes.
Used to say, the great Burt Watson. And I get his voice inside my head all the time. And I still think things. I'm like, that's what Burt would say. Okay. But one of the things that he would say was that no one is bigger than the sport. There is no one individual person who is bigger than the sport of MMA. And I think that the last couple of months have shown that.
Yeah.
I think that a lot of people were very worried that without Ronda, the women's division would curl up in a ball and ask for chocolate and go away. But it hasn't happened, and it's not going to happen because MMA is bigger than any one individual person. And so is our division, and there's a lot more and better fights to come.
Amen. Well done, Leslie Smith. Glad to hear that everything's okay with the tumor, that you got that checked out and corrected. Great stuff from you last week in Las Vegas and even prior to that. Looking forward to your return. I really appreciate your insight. Thank you so much. And even though we disagree on the scorecard on Saturday, I still respect your take as well.
Thank you. I respect your take as well. It's always great to see you. Thank you for including me.
All right. There she is, Leslie Smith. Amazing stuff from her. What fantastic insight from one of the UFC's bantamweight fighters in their women's 135-pound division. That was just amazing stuff. Wow. Speaking intelligently, not coming from any kind of, biased perspective, ulterior motives, no animosity. Really impressive stuff. And, not everyone is cut from the same cloth. Not everyone feels comfortable speaking about this stuff. And I respect that. And you know what? I think the best thing that she said was maybe we have to stop using that word scared. It is weird to call a fighter scared. I mean, what they do blows my mind. I don't know. I do not have that gene in my body that would even allow me to prepare for a battle like that, step into a cage and fight another human being. So they're not scared. I think they have their reservations, and given the climate that they work in, given the history of the sport, they have their reservations, and that's fine. You can't expect people who have been working their entire life to reach a certain status, to reach a certain point, just say, hey, I'm going to stick my neck out. Not really sure the repercussions, not really sure what's going to happen to me and as a result my family, but I'm just going to do this. That's a tough ask right off the bat. And I get it. And some people have less to lose. Some people view their MMA career differently. Everyone's coming from a different spot. It's not going to happen overnight. It's not going to be easy. It's going to be hard to get these men and women to band together, but hopefully at some point. And she also brings up a great point about educating the fighters. The fighters are very focused on their careers, and who can blame them? They have tunnel vision. They have to prepare for the act of fighting another human being in a cage, that's enough pressure. That's enough to worry about. That's enough strain on your mind. Again, it really comes down to the managers. Let's say there's 500 fighters in the UFC, 600 fighters in the UFC. How many managers are there in the UFC? How many elite managers representing big name fighters are there out there in MMA? 10, 15, 20 max? Getting them on board may be an easier task than getting the fighters on board. Because if you get one on board and he represents 10, 15 fighters, now you're talking. So it really falls on the manager's shoulders to get educated and then educate their fighters, as opposed to trying to educate 600 fighters. But I got to tell you, Jeff Boris, man, this guy has balls of steel. Showed up to the press conference, sat there in the front row wearing his PFA collared shirt, white, big logo, sat there right in the middle, showed up to media day, walked up to all the media in attendance, 30 minutes away from the strip at the Red Rock, then started talking to some of the fighters, then was asked to leave. I think he understood that and his work was largely done. Has the press conference, is walking, very visible, walking around the MGM. I mean, this is a guy who has been in some serious negotiations as far as baseball is concerned. Barry Bonds, Ricky Henderson, Bobby Bonilla. He showed a lot of testicular fortitude last week, in my opinion, over in Las Vegas. The week started with that press conference, and admittedly, I wasn't making up drama. I wasn't making it up. It did feel a little flat. And initially I thought, gosh, they're making a mistake by starting this press conference without Conor McGregor. This is a mistake. He needs to be a part of it. He is one half of the story. He is the draw. He's the guy who produces the sound bites. Nate is typically a reactionary interview participant at the press conference. So Conor's not there. I'm like, what is going on? This is bad. We're cutting our nose to spite our face here. Yes, we know there's been tension. Yes, we know he's been late, but you can't start the press conference that we talked about on Monday as the most important media thing of the week. It was important to start with that press conference on Wednesday morning because that was going to set the tone for the entire week. That was really going to light a fire under this promotion. And I was thinking, gosh, this is a mistake. A few minutes in, I realized this is brilliant. I don't know if they planned it this way, but this is actually brilliant. It had become a story in itself. Will he show? Will he not show? Where is he? What's he going to do if he shows up? Why are they starting without him? What's Dana going to say? What's Nate going to say? His absence became a story. And then he shows up. And then he says what he has to say. And then Nate leaves. And then the bottles are thrown. And now all of a sudden, we couldn't have imagined them surpassing the excitement, the atmosphere, the hype that their first two or previous two press conferences leading up to 196 generated. The 202 one back in July, pre-200, I'm excluding because of the audio issues. It seemed unfathomable that they can recreate it, and they did. And then the tone had been set for the entire week. It was brilliant. And I did a bunch of interviews, radio interviews and things like that, and people were asking, was it bad for the sport? Was it contrived? Was it fake? Was it not? No, it was 100% real. And when it's real, to me, it comes across as real. And it's effective. When it is contrived, it's very easy, at least for me. I don't know why there are so many conspiracy theorists out there. It's easy to tell when something's fake. That did not feel fake. Maybe it's because I was there in attendance. That did not feel fake at all. There was nothing fake about that. And I don't think it was bad for the sport at all. Again, sometimes we need to get over ourselves. Sometimes we forget that these individuals, they're not zoo animals. They're about to fight in 72 hours. The idea of them sitting right next to each other, in particular when there's bad blood, the idea of them sitting next to each other and us watching them, hoping they sing and dance for us, sometimes is asking much. And I think at this point, it was asking a lot of both of them. Not to say I didn't want to see it, But you have to understand when sometimes tempers flare, tension boils over. And that's what happened on Wednesday. And so I don't think it was bad at all. Thankfully, no one got hurt. Yeah, they might get fined. They might have to do some community service, but that's it. It was interesting that the UFC couldn't have promoted it quick enough. And I think the word got out, but then they backtracked. Then they got rid of all mentions of that press conference. Everything was erased. Embedded didn't show it. I think part of that came from Nevada and the MGM, because MGM ended up banning all of the corners except for the licensed corners. So all of the members of the entourage, 15 deep or so, Nate was walking around, and Conor sort of the same. They all got banned from the MGM. As you saw, Nick Diaz got banned and others as well. They weren't allowed to enter the weigh-in. But if you were a licensed corner, you were allowed in. That was their response to that. And I get it. I mean, this is a hotel. There are people walking around who have no clue what's going on. They don't need to have a bottle thrown at them. But as far as we're concerned, no one got hurt, so it wasn't serious. And sometimes these things happen. I mean, one of the most famous press conferences of all time, Lennox Lewis and Mike Tyson. Now, that was a mess. Tyson bit his leg. Nothing like that happened. And so that really set the tone. The next day at the Red Rock, at the open workouts, it was a bizarre scene because the room was really small and there really wasn't any Irish presence at all. I mean, that was shocking to me. And Conor seemed a little bit on edge, what he was saying on the mic. I mean, I was having a hard time sort of reading the situation at that point, and I didn't know what to expect. The weigh-ins on Friday weren't at the arena, weren't at T-Mobile, weren't at the MGM. It was in one of those conference rooms that's all level. It's not stadium seating. So I really didn't know what it was going to look like, what was going to happen, how it was going to feel. Will it feel like a Conor fight? Will it feel like a big deal? And then we get there. And then they start off with a UFC 204 press conference, perhaps forgetting about the long-standing history between Ireland and England. But it seemed like the Irish fans didn't care too much for Michael Bisping. I mean, you could not hear a thing. It was a great atmosphere unless you were trying to hear what Bisping and Henderson were saying. They were singing, they were dancing, they were chanting. And again, I'll reiterate, they were on their best behavior. Peter Carroll told me that this was a lot of students who were just looking for a good time. They weren't looking to fight the Diaz contingency. They weren't looking to throw bottles, weapons, punches. I mean, they were literally nose to nose. Literally nose to nose. Nothing happened. You had 65-year-old lovely lady security guards trying to get in there. They weren't going to stop anything if anything happened. Nothing happened. It wasn't needed. We had a blast. We did that preview video. That's the most fun 5 minutes that I've ever had on this job. Ramundi and Al-Shadi picking against McGregor in front of the Irish fans, and then I come in with the cheap pop. It was amazing. It was perfect. Those fans were so much fun. What a privilege it was to be in their presence as they were trying to root on their guy. And I think Sean made a great point. I think their presence and their cheers and everything that they were doing for Conor sort of calmed him down to a degree, lifted his spirits to a degree. But I was still wondering how he would act on Saturday, how he would fight, what he would do. And to me, nothing else can be said. A classic fight. He wins the first round, one knockdown. The leg kicks were brilliant. They didn't win in March, but they certainly learned. Then he drops him twice in the second round. He ends the second round in a really, really serious predicament. I mean, Diaz was coming on strong, punches and bunches, had him up against the cage. It looked like, if there were 30 or more seconds, maybe 45 seconds, Diaz could have stole the round, but he did not steal that round. He really didn't. He really did not steal that round. And then I thought, wow, this third round, this could be real trouble. This could be serious trouble for Conor McGregor. And he weathered that storm. And it looked like he was in trouble. And it looked like he was on the verge of breaking. And he lost that round, clearly, but it was not a 10-8. There's no way that was a 10-8. How can the first or second round not be a 10-8 and then that third round be a 10-8 for Nate Diaz? There's just no way. Conor wins the fourth. He loses the fifth, 48-47. Pretty clear, if you ask me. But again, it exceeded my expectations. I did not expect the classic like that. We learned a lot about Conor McGregor. I think a lot more people respect Conor McGregor, and we learned a lot about Nate Diaz as well. Nate Diaz came back from some serious trouble. He was able to defend the leg kicks a little better. He was able to withstand some big punches that rocked him and dropped him. And I think he started to figure out how to fight Conor in the third round. He was using his distance to his advantage. He didn't need to be inside as much as he was. I think he should have relied on his wrestling more, and credit to Conor for that takedown defense, but I think he should have gone to that well a little bit more. I know he's not the kind of guy to go for a single or a double, but up against the cage, trip him, get him to the ground, frustrate him on the ground. I think that was potentially there. Maybe not. And now the big question is, where do they go from here? Do they have them fight at MSG? Does Dana get what he wants? Is that just public negotiation? What the heck is Conor talking about when he's talking about shit hitting the fan? Is Nate... I wouldn't be surprised if they do go elsewhere with Conor. Nate's going to sit out. He doesn't mind sitting out for a year. He's made a boatload of money. This is the kind of guy who was sitting out, every year, fighting once a year, when he wasn't making anywhere close to this, when he wasn't even making 100K. You know what I'm saying? So he's going to be fine. And you might have to get used to the idea of not seeing him sooner rather than later. Now, if they come back with the rematch or the trilogy, then they'll probably, convince him and he'll be up for fighting. But if not, I firmly believe Nate Diaz when he says that he's not moving unless he gets that fight. That was the most real thing said. No doubt about it. But what's going to happen behind the scenes? That talk of, now I'm speaking to new people and I don't know what's going on. He said it even on this show. He was hoping that the Fertittas would be there. They were not there. He seemed a little disappointed about that. What is going to happen behind the scenes? Fascinating times.